Hello, everybody. Joe Lucey here, president of Secured Retirement Financial, and welcome to this week's July 6th market huddle. I was sitting on the boat this weekend, and some of you probably can see that I probably had a little bit too much sun. But as I was on the beach this weekend, I was starting to figure out what we were going to discuss here today. I said, well, you know what? Let's put together 5 proven steps to achieve financial independence. And so that's what we'll run through here today. As always, if you have questions, feel free to chat and ask a question. We got Michelle working from the beach here today. She's taking the day off, and she says good morning. So anyway, she's our rock star that helps us with most of these each week. And she's probably just as surprised as everybody else in the office here that we were able to put this together without her help today. So anyways, we're going to be talking here 5 proven steps to achieve financial independence on this week's Market Huddle, July 6th, 2020. Can you believe it's already halfway through the year? Think of all the things that have occurred in the last 6 months. And, while there's just as many folks that are out there, analysts, advisors, economists, and what have you, that are thinking that the next 6 months is going to be much better than the last. There are many out there that are thinking that the next 6 months are going to be just absolutely terrible. Nobody knows the future. What we do know is that there are certain things we can control, and really, hopefully, each and every week that we bring these market huddles, that's what our messaging is that we want to make sure that we're focusing on those things that we can control, and hopefully that takes care of those things that we can't. So 5 proven steps to achieve financial independence. Hopefully in the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes, we have shown you some ideas on how you can get your retirement planning, take control of that, and focus on those things we can control. Here's our quick disclaimer. Says that I might talk about things like taxes. I'm not a CPA. We may bring up estate planning. I'm not an attorney. We don't draft legal documents here. I am a certified financial planner. We have several folks in the office with their advanced designations and such, but we focus primarily with families in and around retirement and helping them retire securely. So here is number 1. We want to make sure that we are not letting taxes decimate our life savings. From Forbes, they tell us, I'm going to take the video off here. I can figure out how to do that, and let us focus on the slides here for a few minutes. But anyways, don't let taxes decimate your life savings. From Forbes, they tell us that the more you pay in taxes, the less secure your retirement's going to be, and the greater your chances of running out of money. Overall, what we find are families that are in our office for a complimentary review, or a review of their finances. The number one thing that they're worried about is running out of money. Studies show us that over and over. I believe that if we can focus on things like the tax planning, we can make sure that we can control some of that. The number one expense, when I start thinking about what that's going to be in retirement, we used to think it was going to be healthcare. We used to think it might be things like inflation, housings, things like that. I really believe that maybe the number one expense that we're going to have in retirement, especially now that we've added $3 trillion in stimulus, there's another 2 to 3 trillion that they keep throwing out there that they might be doing. I think that we have to start preparing for taxes. Most people just simply prepare their taxes. Tax preparation is something we do with our accountant, our CPA, but really all we're doing when we do tax preparation is just reporting what's already occurred. What's done is done. It's about looking for a couple deductions and such to reduce our taxes this year. What we're really talking about is looking forward and putting ourselves in a better situation tax-wise long-term. That mean that we're going to be a little bit more proactive about taxes, to pay some taxes now, while I believe they're on sale. In fact, tax rates are the lowest they've been in 40 years. The good news is that we know that taxes are going to the current tax rates are going to expire here January 1st of 2026. And not only if Congress does nothing, do we know that tax rates are going to go back to where we were just a couple years ago, which is a higher rate than today. It's very likely with all the stimulus and such, which I think it needed to be done, but yet we're going to have to pay for that. And I think that the paying is going to start here in just a few short years. So now might be the best time ever to start putting yourself in a better situation tax-wise. From Kiplinger's, they tell us that the silent partner in your 401k, their name is Uncle Sam. Every time Congress meets, there's a chance the government could decide to increase the IRS's share of your savings. And quite frankly, you have nothing to say about it. When we look at maybe our largest asset going into retirement, our IRAs, our 401ks, our 403bs, keep in mind, none of this money has been, taxes have been paid out of this money. Every penny of it has to be taxed someday. It's either going to be taxed at today's rates or very likely at a higher tax rate. So really putting together a proactive plan on how to reduce your taxes makes smart, savvy retirement planning sense. And keep in mind, it's not just taxes around the IRAs and 401ks, the required distributions. It's taxes on Social Security. Up to 85% of your Social Security income is going to be taxed in retirement. That is something we can control. Taxes on our capital gains, taxes on interest, dividends, even hidden taxes like around Medicare and such. Those are all areas we need to be focusing on. And the number one way that we can make sure that we can achieve financial independence in our retirement is by making sure that we don't let taxes decimate our retirement savings. Let's move on to number 2 here, and really that's making sure we have diversified streams of income. Boy, that font came off a little funny there, didn't it? But diversifying sources of income. A lot of times what we see are families are focusing on maybe just how to maximize 1 or 2 sources. I personally don't believe that to really get a diversified plan of income, we want to focus on what I call mailbox income. Mailbox income is money that hits the checkbook each and every month, regardless of what's going on Wall Street. We don't have to go too far back. In the last 6 months, we know that there were a lot of families out there in retirement that were taking withdrawals systematically out of their 401ks. They were taking out 2%, 3%, 4%, and just living on that money. But when we do that, we have to rely on the stock market performing well. All of a sudden, we said 34% rapid decline in the stock market. While nobody likes to lose money, we hate losing it fast. But the absolute worst thing that can happen when we see the market come down is that I'm forced to take money to meet an obligation out of my brokerage account or out of my 401k that just got beat up in value. So having diversified sources is important. Focusing on things like Social Security. We all have a decision on whether to take our Social Security right away in retirement, or maybe even taking it at full retirement age and double dipping if we're going to work past 66 or 67, or deferring it as long as possible. 2 biggest mistakes we see: families take Social Security as soon as possible, or families wait too long. Really, there's a fine point. If you go back to the Goldilocks story with the porridge too hot, porridge too cold, porridge just right, your porridge temperature, your income around Social Security, we want to make sure we get it just right. And there's a lot of different ways we can help you do that. One would be to schedule a analysis, what we call the Secured Retirement Social Security Analysis. And in a few minutes, we'll talk about how we can do that. Well, I know that there's a lot of folks on here that are current clients. We also know that some of you are coming to us. Either you were in our database, you had attended an event of ours somewhere along the past, maybe even you visited with us, or we're seeing more and more families coming in our office over the last few months because of word of mouth. We have clients that are raving fans talking to their friends about what we do for them and how we separate ourselves from others. And one of those areas is about making sure we're looking at a customized income plan, what we call the Secure Retirement Roadmap, turn-by-turn directional guide on how to maximize things like mailbox income, Social Security, optimizing your pensions, looking for rental income if that's something. We also can look at interest income from the bank, although that's suffered somewhat recently with the lower interest rates. We can look at dividend income, capital gains, royalties, lots of different things. It's about diversifying it and then deciding how reliable it is, and then back testing your income plan both historically and statistically to ensure that your money's not going to outlast you, or that you will outlast your money. So that's the number 2 way. The number 1, making sure that we aren't paying more than our fair share of taxes. Number two, having a diversified income stream. We're talking about how to make sure that what are the 5 things to get financial independence. And the third one is making sure that we are looking at things like having a diversified source of income. And number 3 is making sure that our income planning is accurate. I kind of talked about this maybe more than I should have in the last slide, but Bloomberg tells us that 96% of hardworking Americans are going to lose an average of $111,000 in Social Security benefits, and that's due to poor critical timing mistakes. They're making mistakes around when they collect their benefits. It's complicated. There's 2,728 rules in what the Social Security Administration calls their POMS, the Program Operating Manual System. And around those 2,728 rules, there's literally another 2,728. We wrote the book. I wrote the book on Social Security benefits, the Retiree Social Security Guide. If you'd like a copy, when you come in our office for a complimentary review, or if you're a current client and next time you see us, just ask us for a copy or reach out to the office, or we'd be happy to send you one. Social Security is that important. It's really the main piece around making sure that we maximize our income and having a diversified source of income around that. So we can talk about that after the presentation. If you'd like to take a few minutes to visit with us, we can go through that. The fourth strategy that we can do to make sure we get financial independence, it's about reducing your investment risk. If there's one thing that you can do to protect your investments from a volatile stock market, it's making sure that you have a properly diversified portfolio. Diversification, asset allocation are very critical to protecting your wealth. Most families come to us. They say, Joe, if you can, make sure I have all the income I need so that I can spend in confidence in retirement. I've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and I want to make sure that I can maintain that lifestyle throughout my entire retirement years. That really goes back to the last couple slides where we were talking about making sure we have income. Families say, Joe, if you can, help me reduce my tax footprint. Show me how I can reduce taxes if it doesn't compromise my income that I need to live my lifestyle. And then the third thing families say is, Joe, if you can help us grow our wealth, we'd love it, but don't do it at the risk or the compromise of making sure we're going to have the income. Once we get to a point with your retirement planning where we know that we have an income plan in place, oftentimes families say, is there anything we can do to get even more wealth for our out of our portfolio without sacrificing those other areas? One way to do that is making sure we're reducing our risk, or we're looking at the amount of risk that's appropriate for us. There's 3 kinds of risk in retirement. There's risk required. In other words, sitting on your hands, not having your money work hard for you. Easy to do in this lower interest rate environment if you're risk adverse. You have to have a certain amount of your money growing to make sure that we keep up with inflation. The other next risk that we see is risk capacity. Risk capacity says that there's a financial mathematical number that we can come up with that'll show you exactly how much you can lose and still maintain your lifestyle, not have to change things. When we see families that are taking on more risk than their risk capacity, again, this is kind of more fresh with what's happened over the last few months with COVID and everything and the big market correction. We got to make sure that we're never in a position where we're taking on more risk than we should. And then finally is risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is that emotional risk score. Some families come to us and say, Joe, I don't ever want to lose any money. I can't handle a downturn or a statement that goes backwards. Other families say, Joe, if we aren't risking the amount of money we need and we aren't going to, why not tee it high, let it fly, try to grow as much as we can for the kids? Well, that's risk tolerance, but we can't have our risk tolerance so aggressive that it compromises our risk capacity. But on the other hand, we can't be so conservative we aren't growing it enough. So all 3 of these risks, risk tolerance, risk capacity, risk required, have to come into play. And then we want to make sure that, and again, with what we've seen more recently, we know what that risk looks like for us. One thing we do for every one of our clients and in our reviews is a portfolio EKG. We will show you historically what your portfolio looks like, and we again test that statistically, mathematically, to make sure you know what that looks like. So if you'd like to review that with everything going on, make sure you take advantage of the 15-minute strategy call that we have here coming up in just a few minutes. Whether or not you're a client, we want to make sure that everybody that's attending the webinar today has the opportunity to do that, and I'll be sharing with you the link to do that in just a few minutes here. Finally, understanding, and I think most of our clients already know this, wealth management is different than having a tax plan. Wealth strategies, the investment strategies, are different than having a written income plan. When it comes to having a comprehensive game plan, having everything brought together, it brings order to everything you have. It kind of organizes things. If you don't have a comprehensive financial game plan that covers all your bases, you're probably setting yourself up for a failure. Only focusing on the investments is not a comprehensive retirement plan. It's about, how do we bring in taxes? How do I bring my money back? How do I make sure it's going to last a lifetime? What happens with my taxes and my income stream? Should I pass on, or my spouse pass on? How do we make sure that at the end of the day, there's something for the kids if that's important? How do I cover increasing health care? We talk a lot about our strategy here at Secure Retirement Financial. Those of you that have been through the process know that we have 3 phases of our planning. The first phase is always about income and investments. Next, we talk about how to reduce taxes. And finally, our third phase is about making sure everything comes together. Let's look at the taxes. Let's look at the health care. Let's look at the estate planning. Bring that all together, bringing it all into organization, that's so that you have a plan. You know, according to Kiplinger's, they tell us that planning for retirement is like building a house. The fundamental features of any home are the foundation, the walls, and the roof. Of course, there are some details, the electrical, the plumbing, and what have you. But if we focus on these 3 core areas, the foundation, walls, and roof, the foundation, making sure there's an income plan in place, maximizing Social Security, maximizing mailbox income, bringing in the walls, reducing taxes, and then making sure we look at all those things that can go wrong in retirement. That's how we build a solid, secure retirement plan, and that's how what we offer here at Secured Retirement Financial. So with that said, if there are any questions, I'm happy to start taking some questions. I am going to start to share the video again here. Here we go. And then finally, here's that offer I've been promising. If you'd like to get on our calendars, whether you're a client, somebody that maybe has been attending these here every week, that we've been doing this since March 23rd, when the market actually hit the bottom, or if you were referred and somebody passed on this video, feel free. We want to make sure that just for attending the call here today, that you can have access to 15 minutes answering. The idea behind this is really simple. What's the number one action step you can take today to make sure that you can make a significant improvement in your retirement planning, or address any of those concerns that you have as a client of ours, or somebody that is attending these? Let's look at those. Today's episode, really, it's been about achieving financial success. Quick review: make sure that we have a tax plan. Number 2, having diversified sources of income, making sure it's not all coming from one place, making sure it's not all exposed to the stock market. The third one was maximizing Social Security, making sure that we are optimizing. It's not always about maximizing, but optimizing the Social Security for our current situation. And then the fourth thing that we discussed here was reducing, or maybe just acknowledging, the amount of risk in your portfolio, making sure it's appropriate for you. And finally, let's bring it all together, have a comprehensive game plan, a game plan that talks about how we're going to do in the first half, which is accumulating money for retirement. Second half, how do I take this back, make it tax efficient, last a lifetime? And let's see if we had any other questions. Oh, I guess we do. David, trying to sell overvalued stocks and lowering GDP outlook and poor. What are your thoughts? Just curious. All-time highs. You know what? I think that overall, I think that's Goldman Sachs talking about valued stock. Understand that most of the analysts out there, their job is not necessarily to get their projections that the forward-looking right. When I was growing up, I used to watch Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser. If you remember Louis Rukeyser, he used to be on PBS, and I'm not kidding. My mom likes to tell this story. I was 7, 8 years old. I'd wake up early so I could watch him. But every year at the end of the year, they had these elves come up, and the elves would always predict where the markets are going to go. One elf would say the market's going to be up 25%. One elf would say the market's going to be down 25%. A lot of these economists have made their names. Mario Gabelli predicted 1987 market correction. So all of a sudden, they're brought to these different levels. So a lot of times we'll see analysts do that. An analyst's job, contrary to what we might think, is not necessarily be right all the time. In fact, they're held less reliable on getting it right than probably the weatherman is. But their job is to create volume. Goldman Sachs, big brokerage firms, they make money when there's a lot of volume. And so do independent brokerage firms, TD Ameritrade, Schwab, Fidelity. More volume, the better they do. So I don't always think so much about somebody saying this is overvalued, this is undervalued. I'm not sure exactly what the analyst was that said that, but I'll bet you that they probably aren't batting 1,000. They're batting something less than that. I truly believe that the next piece of this is what is going to happen with this COVID and such over the next 6 months. If we start to see a major recurrence and they start locking us up again, well, the market's going to have a really tough time. If, however, they can keep this systematic rollout and things kind of stay and the kids are going back to school and such, I think it's going to be a little bit easier time. I'm less concerned about results of the election, honestly, than I am about the rollout of COVID. And I think a lot of the things around COVID are going to kind of start to disappear as we get through the election season. But maybe that's a little bit more personal or whatever. I guess I don't know either. What's more important, David, is making sure that the markets are going to go up, the market's going to go down, the market's going to stay flat. And putting together that comprehensive plan, having that game plan, that fifth one, the comprehensive game plan, that's going to make sure that your investments that your retirement is going to be successful regardless of what the market does. That's more important. So if you want to talk about how we can help you with that, if you want to review what we've been able to do, schedule this 15 minutes that everybody has access to there. So, and I'll make sure that one of our team members sits down and we can make sure we address that for you in your own specific situation. That's a long answer to probably what could have been a pretty short. I have no idea if Goldman Sachs guy's right. What's more important is having a plan put in place so that you're going to have a secure retirement regardless of what goes on with Wall Street is really, I guess, what my answer's trying to be there. With that said, let's see. Thanks very much. Semper Fi, Dave. Thank you for your service too. And that's about all we got this week. I went a little longer than I meant to. Sorry about that, but I hope everybody has a great week. It's going to be probably a slower week in the markets because of the 4th of July, doldrums of summer and everything else. But boy, the weather looks like even after a little bit of rain today, we're going to have a kind of a beautiful rest of the week. So hope everybody else has a good rest of their day. That's it. Have a great day and a great week. Bye-bye.